All right, welcome back. This is from Christal XO, and I am your host, Christal Jordan. As I told you guys earlier, if you tuned in earlier when I was talking about the Ready to Love 100th recap, it has been a long day. Christal has no makeup on. She is just doing it and doing it and doing it well. We are doing it tonight, au natural. But it was important to have this conversation about Real Housewives of Potomac in real time. So I want to thank all of you guys that are here. I'm getting ready to bring my fantabulous co-host on so we can get into this. If you guys are here and you can hear us, please put an XO in the comment. I want to make sure that we're having an interactive conversation tonight because this is a really serious subject. And I just feel like we need to have a real conversation about what happened last night on Bravo on Real Housewives of Potomac. So without further ado, let me bring in my girl Brenda. Hey girl.
Hey, I'm rocking out with you. No makeup, nothing. So we're good.
We are good. We are good. You look beautiful as always.
So do you.
Thank you. Thank you. But I am, first of all, I was like, we get on here and we've been talking about Real Housewives of Potomac, and we'll do Married at First Sight again this week. But last night's episode was extremely upsetting because of the fact that they try to deal with the issue that has been a consistent theme in Potomac in 2 minutes, right? And I wanted to say to you, I wanted to text you earlier. I just have had a really crazy day because you wrote a amazing article that you shared with me months ago that actually dealt with this exact topic, the colorism and how it plays out in the way the cast on Real Housewives of Potomac is received. And so if you can just share a little bit about that article, and I'm going to put the link to the article in this chat, or at least in this in the intro for this, so when people go back and watch this, they can see that. But it really summed up. It was almost like a precursor for this season. But most importantly, the way it was dealt with at the reunion, it just, I think your article added so much context and light to it. And we did not see that happen last night.
Yeah, so I primarily structured the article around how Robin Dixon is a prime example of a lighter skinned, woman of color, African American who evades the consequences of colorism, in contrast to her darker skinned co-stars. So I used her as like the story arc of it, because I felt like up until this season, and really up until the episode in which she was like basically verbally abusing Wendy at that one scene at the table where she calls Charisse and has Charisse verify a phony story about how Charisse did not have to physically hold her back when she charged toward Wendy in the beginning of the season, and how, Candace and Monique and Wendy have been basically vilified for their aggressive behavior or their reactions to certain things, or what has been perceived as outbursts. Where if you've been a fan or a viewer of the Real Housewives of Potomac since season 1, Robin has been, I feel like, one of the biggest, as they would say on social media, bullies of them all. And I feel like she really uses her physicality against her co-stars in a lot of these instances. I feel like she also lacks the ability to, as Candace would say, orate and she gets frustrated to the point where she uses her physicality to her advantage. So getting up in people's faces, putting her hands in people's faces, but prior to that, before it escalates to that point for her, she typically is just, she resorts to cursing and yelling. She has no idea how to like verbally argue without any of that.
We had this conversation about that. I'm going to ask you this. Well, first of all, I'm going to read a comment, because I was talking to one of my my girlfriends about the fact that we were going to have this conversation today, and she sent me a quote, and I just want to read that. I also want to see if, you know, you guys listening out there, please, we got 3 comments in the chat. I need some of the other people that are watching, and we have almost 30 people watching live. I need you guys to let us know what you think. But the comment is from a good friend of mine, and she said, season 1 of Real Housewives of Potomac was all about this facade of class, wealth, privilege, status, and it wasn't an accident that all of them were light-skinned except Charisse. And Charisse ironically had more money and status than all of them. Colorism was an unspoken character based on the fact that they don't accept, based on the way they accept or don't accept others. And I thought that was really, really deep, because I do feel like we know that Potomac has this long-standing history, right, of almost like this idea of being these people that have generational wealth, or that are supposed to be so connected and have all this. Last night, Karen made a statement that her family owns the plantation that her family was at one point enslaved upon. And while that is a good thing, a lot of times those opportunities were passed down to people that were to house, people that were in the house, because they were part of the master's blood, and so they were given priority over the slaves that were not. And so I think there are longstanding roots of colorism in Potomac, and I do feel like it was kind of played out. It just looks very different when you're talking about the way the Real Housewives franchise. Potomac was very different. It took a while for it to take off. You guys remember it didn't really do that great the first couple of seasons, but what was very clear was it was this idea of the privileged African-American woman, right? As opposed to Atlanta, where you saw a more working class, different, the priorities were very different there. And so I do feel like this is something that has to be talked about, even when other characters are introduced in the show. Obviously, Wendy is somebody that, this whole situation that we saw played out with her responding to Mia throwing a drink in her face, and Giselle and Robin both said that she was being antagonistic, that Wendy was being antagonistic after a drink was thrown in her face, So I don't know if that's necessarily, I don't know if it's colorism between the ladies so much as it is, the problem is the way the viewers respond to it. That's, to me, my biggest problem, is when people are watching the show, they automatically villainize Candace, Wendy, and even Monique more so than Ashley, Giselle, Karen, and Robin. I feel like there's definitely a difference in the way Black Twitter responds to the women. And then, of course, as Casey says, Robin, Ashley, Karen, and Giselle benefit from colorism, from the public perception, but not all of them perpetuate colorism. I think it's hard to say who perpetuates and who just benefits from it, right? Because if something is working in your favor,
you don't always identify that. You can't always point it out to you.
Yeah.
Like it's not exclusive to you.
Yeah. I think it's hard. This also, I just finished doing a recap on the 100th episode of Ready to Love, and colorism has been a consistent topic on that show as well. Even Basketball Wives. You remember that situation on Basketball Wives where it's like if brown skin or, brown skin or chocolate women have a certain response, the audience responds so differently than a fair skinned person. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to talk about it. A lot of people get upset when we actually address it. But to me, if you don't address it, it's going to continue, because these are issues that are deep rooted in our community. And I feel like you have to be honest about it and actually have conversation, or we just ignore it and it doesn't go anywhere. You know?
I think Potomac has been very interesting as a person who's been a fan from the start. I wasn't one who was like slow to catch on versus everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you touched on was the whole idea of like the have and the have nots.
Yeah.
Potomac has been very much about classism and being the upper echelon of a specific section in Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
especially in an area which is primarily white. And then you have these, you know, women of color who are movers and shakers in this specific area. So if you did watch it from season 1, there was a lot of talk about etiquette.
Yes.
And you know, I'm not a fan of Robin, but the way in which they tore her down for, you know, for having financial issues, the whole thing with I'm Monique and I have 4 homes. Like, it's just been very interesting to watch how colorism and classism have kind of like clashed,
Mm-hmm.
and have been intertwined with this specific class. I used to think that it was just the audience that was really like making it worse or perpetuating it. But if you actually look back, I think that there have been certain points in which the cast has really played into it as well, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Even back to Monique and Candace's fight, they were, you know, they were once friends, and then as soon as Monique, you know, physically attacked her, which was wrong, even Candace jumped on the "you're a hood rat, bitch," you know, you're a gutter, all of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys are equal, you know, you guys are one and the same. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just been interesting to watch how all of this has transpired over 7 seasons.
I agree. You know, another thing that irritates me about Potomac specifically, and I have issues with Atlanta as well, but what specifically irritates me about Potomac is the women are catty in a different way. You mentioned etiquette, and it's all, you know, I think what made the situation with Monique stand out and why people did not feel like she was a good fit is because these women are very strategic in how it all plays out in a very condescending way. And so the comments about the ageist comments that are made consistently across the board, it comes from like this old school idea of your worth is connected to a man, right? And that is a theme that plays out on this show in a different way than on other shows. To me, you don't look at like Atlanta, and I'm going to compare it to Atlanta because that's the only other women of color, like, you know, Black women, because New Jersey has got Italian women, but we're talking about the African American community. Constantly the pitting people, making fun of people because they're not married or they don't have a man. To me, it comes from that very old school, I'm better than you, my pedigree is this. And it is disgusting to me to see it still played out this way. I mentioned that in our last conversation, Karen, you know, and some of the other ladies talking, well, you don't even have a man like that. It's just very old school and narrow minded to me. The way Potomac is positioned is very different than some of the other than Atlanta and some other shows, where you see women are, you know, supported and applauded for being businesswomen. To me, in Potomac, it's not even about businesses. We see Ashley on the first season, her entire business was her getting this rich white husband, right? And they did, which Candace was, you know, very clear to brought up the first segment of the reunion. She had nothing going on besides the fact that she was married to this wealthy man, and yet they made it seem like Candace was the one that had the least going on because she was being, you know, supported by her mother. And Ashley has not been someone that has tried to do business. Like, she's not saying that you have to do everything. I'm not suggesting that women need to be, you know, success should be measured by how much money you're making. But I'm suggesting in Potomac, they're measuring it based on the wealth and value of their significant other. Karen talked a lot about Ray being the Black Bill Gates. And then, you know, Sharice was doing the same thing as well. And I think that's also one of the reasons that when her marriage fell apart, she really was not able to, there are probably other reasons that she left the show, but I think a big part of that is the embarrassment of, you have to have a man, you have to have this support system. I think it was disgusting to see the way Ashley and Candace were literally going at each other. And Ashley's, claim to fame was being this, biracial young lady that has been, taught to get the man with the money, and that's what I'm doing. And that's her entire storyline. Giselle and doesn't really, there's nothing really going on. There's nothing happening with these ladies except who they are with and who they feel is validating them from another side. That's one of the things that I don't like about Potomac. I think it's interesting, and the reads are great because I personally prefer, I like the wit and I think as women, when you see women able to kind of match wits and go back and forth, because we know reality TV wants entertainment, but I don't like the fact that they are quick to point out a husband's worth as opposed to really just focusing on themselves as women. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be proud to be a wife or whatever, but it really is about the validation of having a wealthy husband with status that is just really yesterday to me. Like, I don't feel like that's where we should be at right now. I also feel like Candace is, to me, probably the wittiest on the show. But her comments about Giselle's
uterus.
your what did she call it?
When her uterus was failing.
But she called it something. Your dwindling uterus.
Dwindling
uterus. Like, I just, that those statements are very anti-woman. And it's really sad to see this cast of, beautiful women constantly going at each other about things that all of us are going to age, and who you're married to could change overnight for anybody. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you are. Even Karen, who has been married the longest, one day could wake up and either, her husband may not be there, as far as, you could become a widow. I'm not saying that I want that to happen. I'm just saying that's a possibility. You just cannot put your validation in your husband or something like that. And so that irritates me about this cast. Saptosa says that's because for most of this cast, marriage was their ticket into the upper class. I agree. And that's why that's the disconnect for me with Potomac rather than other seasons. The issues that I have with Atlanta are totally different, but at least we see women out there working hard, trying to, actually create something for themselves. Even women that are married, you look at Kandi Burruss, and Kandi is out here with all these different companies and actually trying and being a wife. And it's just not the same level of, I have a husband, so I'm better. Like that's, we don't see that played out on any other shows, in my opinion, besides Potomac. What do you think, Brenda?
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with Saptosa. I think that applies to every woman on the cast except Candace. Mm-hmm. So, Mia was pulled off the pole, by G, and he made her a part of his business affairs, which we'll get into that.
That's a whole nother, that went crazy, but I wanted to talk about this part first.
I 100% agree. Like whether they're still with the men that they were initially connected to or not, i.e., Robin may have gained and lost. Ashley gained and is losing. So, but their meal ticket onto the show, or the attraction of producers for them on the show, is that they were with these men. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of a show like this is to establish yourself outside of your man, and I don't think that majority of the cast has done that.
I don't think that's not a priority for this cast. KC says Karen and Ashley did, but Robin and Giselle come from well-connected or money families. I'm sure.
Robin.
Not Robin. I don't know Robin's background. I do know that Robin, I am assuming, because we've seen Robin's parents, right? Mm-hmm. I think that there is this idea that you put up, appearances mean everything, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that explains why Robin was with Juan from the time they were in high school. And Juan could cheat, Juan could be disrespectful. There doesn't seem to really be anything that Juan can do that would make Robin leave him alone, because even at the point where she was disrespected, he had been cheating, they still were living together in the same house and keeping up appearances. And that kind of goes back to that old school idea of, you know, it looks a certain way, we have to keep our status. And so I don't know that she came from a family with high status, but the behavior that she's exhibiting and staying with a man that is being extremely disrespectful, does not treat you, you know, treat you with like you have any value, would suggest that she does come from a family that at least
she comes from a traditional family. Like her parents have been married for
yeah.
like 40 something years. It was something that I had written about not too long ago.
Okay.
But her parents are, you know, like lower middle class or maybe middle class. They're from there. She grew up in like Baltimore city/county. They were, I believe they were educators. Her mother was like a professor. But as far as like pedigree, Giselle has a specific pedigree, which is why you know, her contribution to the second part of the reunion was even more disgusting, which we will get into, because she does come from a family of activists, specifically within the civil rights movement. So she should know better, but we know that that's not the case.
Y'all excuse the dogs. They, I don't know what's happening. They all of a sudden they got excited. They got excited. Let's talk about that, because let's talk about Giselle's response. I saw Carlos King's recap last night. I actually agreed a lot with him, and I actually appreciate him coming out and speaking about it, because I know that Carlos is friendly with all of them. I'm going to say this. I feel like Andy Cohen addressing it, and if you guys notice, Andy mentioned that he asked the cast how they wanted to deal with it, if they wanted to bring a moderator in or if they wanted him to do it. I feel like the fact that the cast did not want a moderator that would have been better suited to have this conversation come in and have it was proof that there's an even bigger issue, because there's just no way that Andy could articulate this conversation, or should be articulating this conversation. And the fact that they did not want that, to me, was very telling. They don't feel, Robin, Giselle, Ashley did not feel comfortable having that conversation, nor did they want to have that conversation. Um,
Yeah, I
I'm not a Karen super fan at all. And I appreciate Karen attempting, but leading the conversation with sharing that her family owns the plantation, I just feel like it wasn't, you're not really trying to have this conversation. You're using it as another opportunity to grandstand. And I just feel like another moderator would have been able to hold everybody accountable and actually have a conversation that yielded more depth and context. So I was really disappointed that Andy did not push to actually handle it in a more um, responsible way. I'll say that.
I think that it's twofold. I think I appreciate that he did try to have the conversation, but I think that it's impossible to try to fit it into a 3-part reunion.
Yeah.
Because I think that colorism is an issue across Housewives franchises, number one, with any cast members of color. So I think that obviously it would have been better served, or if it were like a separate special,
Yeah.
or like you said, that it was, instead of using the additional 30 minutes for you know, Robin's tell-all, we could have used that, you know, for the colorism conversation. Whether or not they should have brought in a moderator, obviously, like you mentioned, most of the cast did not want to bring in a moderator because they did not want to have the conversation. They did not want to be called out for any of the ways in which they contribute to this issue. As far as Karen is concerned, I understand, you know, what you're saying, because Karen can come off, I'm a fan of Karen. Karen can come off as being, you know, she's the grand dame. But I think in this case that what she did was actually beneficial, because colorism is very difficult to understand, whether you are African American, a person of color, or not. And it's very complex. So I feel like, even though Candace gave us, you know, the textbook Merriam-Webster definition, Karen provided more historical context by using the plantation and, you know, slave master to slave, indoor outdoor slave, example of how colorism even came to be.
Yeah. I I'll give you that on Karen. Casey says, I doubt anyone of substance would want to moderate. I don't agree with that. I feel like there are a lot of different people that they could have went to for that conversation. I can name several that would have been great to have. And I don't feel like you had to go really deep with it.
Especially because they're so close to DC too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, there are so many people that would have been a great option to come in and handle that conversation. And I understand, like you said, that they could not do an entire, maybe they didn't want to do an entire segment, but we spent 30 minutes. Yes, we're going to talk about Robin in a minute, but the Mia situation and the fact that, and the board members and the managing members, that conversation went on 20 minutes, right?
That was a whole thing before a commercial break.
Exactly. And we know Mia's lying.
Yeah, and we could have, honestly, like, I text you and I told you we could have saved, Giselle's hysterectomy as well, because that was not a major story. And I don't mean that with any harm, because let me throw it out by saying, before people come at me in the comments,
right.
I come from a family of women who have reproductive issues or different issues related to, their uterus. So whether that's fibroids or endometriosis or whatever, most women in my family have had a partial or a full hysterectomy before the age of 40. So I am very sympathetic to that. What I'm trying to say is, in relation to Giselle's storyline, that conversation should probably not have been held, because from my recollection, we only saw that in two scenes. The scene that she was in the car with Robin explaining that she had a biopsy, and the scene that she told her 3 daughters about her having to have surgery. That was not something that carried through the season. That could have 100% misread.
I disagree with you on that. I feel like, and I actually applaud Andy for holding Giselle accountable in that moment. Giselle does not like to show vulnerability at all, which is it's surprising that she has been able to get away with it. I think we talked about the fact that she's one of the executive producers, but she's one of the only cast members on the show besides Robin, which Robin has actually she just lied and hid this whole thing, but Giselle manages to get out of anything all the time. So the fact that Giselle did not want to show vulnerability when, you saw her tearing up. I don't know if the tears were honest or not, but she was like, we'll talk about that later. And Andy was like, no, we're going to talk about it now. I feel like that was, I applaud him for actually making her go through the conversation. I feel like number one, we know production likes stuff that is juicy, and I don't know that they felt like that situation was, or maybe Giselle just doesn't deliver. Giselle has an issue, like I said, with showing vulnerability. So whenever she's in situations where there is vulnerability, she goes back behind that wall. You can literally physically see it. She just goes back, and she did that last night. But I do think that was necessary. I think that's the most feeling that you get from her, you know what I mean? Because otherwise we just see her pointing and poking at other people. So I appreciate the fact that he did bring up something, because otherwise Giselle she would have had no contribution to the entire reunion. The only other storyline that we have from Giselle is her basically lying on Candace's husband. So, I feel like Candace held her accountable for that. Andy did as well, but Candace really was like, no, I'm not accepting that apology. You've been lying. Like, no, we're not going to do that. So I feel like Giselle needed all the smoke. And I definitely, with the situation with a hysterectomy, I can relate to that. I went through ovarian cancer early, and that was one of the suggestions or solutions to me having ovarian cancer was a hysterectomy. At that time, I was 31 years old. So I did not want to go through that process, because I just, it does feel like a part of your womanhood is connected to it. So I do believe that she did feel there was vulnerability there. I don't think the tears were fake. But I feel like I'm glad Andy did not let her weasel out of that, because that's what she was trying to do. I feel like to me, this season should show Bravo that Giselle and Robin both need to be treated like other cast members, or the audience is probably going to turn on this franchise, because as we're going to get into in a minute, Robin basically was a hypocrite the entire reunion. She's defending Giselle. And in the meantime, mentioning a woman shouldn't be alone in a room with a married man. Her husband is paying for hotel rooms. And then last night she says, well, she was doing things anytime Candace doesn't want to talk on camera. We're on a reality show, so we should always we have to have conversations on camera. Are you kidding me? You just had a whole conversation with your husband about a prenup and left out the fact on camera that he had an affair on you. And that's why you wanted him to have this prenup. So I think that if nothing else, the viewers should demand that both Robin and Giselle are held accountable to what's going on in their lives if they're going to be getting these checks for the show, because it's really just not fair that we see Candace literally going through the entire process of trying to get pregnant. We saw her in the first 2 seasons, her issues with her mother, her issues with her husband, and learning how to be like, we see everyone else's vulnerability. They
even
definitely
Ashley has put it, except for this season, I feel like she's kind of taken a note from, Giselle and Robin. But for the most part, Ashley, whether she's defended Michael to the core or not, has laid everything out. So it's just inexcusable. But and I think you and I spoke about this too, via text, is that it'll be interesting to see how because I feel like the way in which production has like completely played Robin and Giselle this season is a foreshadow of what is to come next season. It's going to be, to me, I feel like it's going to be a very hard downfall. If I were Robin, I wouldn't even come back to the show. Like, girl, I would just take my L and leave, because you have given not just your co-stars, but the viewers, producers, so much fire to go off of.
Yeah.
As far as Giselle, I mean, I feel like a lot of for the most part, I feel like viewers have been over Giselle, and I think Robin has been slow to catch that heat. But after this season, no.
Yeah, no, this season is definitely, I agree with you, as a setup for what is to come. I don't think, again, going back to the fact that these women don't have anything else going on outside of this show. I can't imagine either one of them not signing back up to come on. What is Giselle going to do? Her cosmetics line? I mean, that's unreasonably shady. The fact that Robin was trying to get people to go to Patreon to, pay for the information about her and Juan suggests that the reasonably shady is not the check. They're not getting the check there because she didn't share this information there. So
Juan's Coppin State check might be in jeopardy as well. So
yes, that is true. Because we got to talk about them, but let's talk about Mia, because last night Jacqueline came out. They alluded to both of them have bedazzled boxes. Which is crazy.
Her bedazzled box matches Giselle's bedazzled.
Oh my!
Her dress.
The pillars of bedazzle on Giselle's horrific. I feel like Giselle's reunion gown is the worst in housewife history.
My cousin doesn't even watch this show. She's a writer as well, and so sometimes she has to like write about reality TV, and she doesn't watch Potomac, but she'll watch the clips. This is her first season, like getting into it. And we talked earlier, and she was like, "What did Giselle have on?"
I'm just like, am I the only one that was like unbelievably disgusted by that? It had it just I don't know what stylist made that dress, but I think it's the worst reunion look in housewife history. I cannot think of anyone else that looked worse.
I mean, I was so not phased. She always looks like that.
But it's worse. It's worse. What do you guys think? I just feel like it was worse. It was like a Cookie Monster suit with bedazzled across the top. I hated it.
Like I said, worse next to Contessa from Mary.
Okay, I forgot about Contessa. But all right, let's talk about Mia, because again, we've talked about the board members and the managing members and the fact that Mia was lied about having cancer. 20 minutes of the first season, the first episode for the reunion, and then we had to revisit it again this time. And I just was like, I'm over it. We know that Mia's not going to be honest. She's not even a clever liar. She just
No.
it's ridiculous. I mean, someone said earlier that she should be fired. The rental properties that you're renting. We had to hear about that again. I was just like, oh my God, we're going back.
Okay. Whew.
You have rental properties. That means that you are it was unbelievable. And the fact that she's bi-coastal in DC and North Carolina. So all of that we briefly touched on again so that Jacqueline could come. Now, what's interesting, and I want to ask you guys' opinion on this. Andy held her feet to the fire by asking her if she felt like because Jacqueline said that she felt like Mia treated her like a peasant, right? And that was funny to me.
Agree.
That was funny to me because it reminded me of when Martell called coleslaw a peasant. Hilarious. But Andy asked if she was doing that to get back at her because when she was living with Jacqueline's family growing up, maybe she felt like she was less than. And so now it's her time to kind of, get that revenge, that secret revenge or that resentment out towards Jacqueline. I feel like he had a point with that because it's so strange that literally as soon as Jacqueline got on the show and the fact that the other girls actually kind of welcomed her on, Mia turned on her so quickly and started to tell her business in a group chat with the other women. And we know Mia doesn't like the other women.
Unwarranted too.
So I don't know why Mia would do that to her only ally on the show. I mean, Jacqueline literally came around up under her behind, like loving on her, basically speaking for her. It was ridiculous. And she turned on her quicker than she threw that drink in Wendy's face.
Yeah, so, I thought that was a good observation from Andy. I must say I wrote this in an analysis that I did last night as well, that Andy, to me, this is the best reunion hosting that he has done because he typically plays favorites and is biased in his line of questioning. He must have been reading some viewer comments and watching YouTubers and all types of stuff because he's really gotten it together this time around. And I hope this is consistent for all of the franchises. Yeah. But I thought that was a good observation. And one thing that I noticed with Mia in this specific segment with Jacqueline, she regrets the way that she treated her and it's too late. I don't think for Jacqueline that is any coming back. Because it was just so out of left field for Jacqueline. Yeah. I feel like it's like, girl, what?
I also think I agree with you because I feel like when Jacqueline mentioned that her family, because I forgot about the fact that Mia, they're connected from like when they were younger. So Jacqueline's family fostered her, and then to see her, she said, my mother doesn't watch it, but the rest of the family members are disgusted. To see the way she talked about her sister and her children, I could see her family not being okay with them actually ever rekindling that friendship. I don't really think I don't give Jacqueline that much credit because I feel like anybody that's that much of a follower, we don't know that she just is following Mia or she's following Fame. I don't know what that is, but I don't really give her, I don't have a lot of faith in her having a strong personality. But the fact that there are family members that were a part of helping Mia and, nurturing her and taking her in, and to see the way she turned on her, I don't think that friendship is going to resurface. I don't think that Mia understands friendship at all. I
don't either because there's a difference between people who were raised and nurtured in love versus survival. And even though Mia may have had a wonderful experience as a part of Jacqueline's family when they fostered her, she was already 15 by the time she got to that family. So, she had 15 years of learning how to live off of survival. And I really feel like a lot of times there is a disconnect with empathy and sympathy and like understanding that there are consequences for your actions and all of that stuff. But I really do give kudos to Andy for that observation because even in the way in which they're currently living their lives now, Mia feels like she's come up.
Yeah.
And I guess she felt kind of indebted to Jacqueline in some way. So she's always like looked out for her, but she essentially feels like she's doing better than Jacqueline. So she because she does these things for Jacqueline financially and materialistically, that she can just treat her any way that she wants to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not how life goes. And you've probably lost the only friend that you've ever had.
Yeah.
And throughout all of this.
I agree. That's a really good point about the survival versus love. People raised on survival versus love. And Mia is a perfect example of that because she does not value anything besides the come up, right? So the husband that she has is because of the come up, right? The way that they were treating the husband's family. It's obvious. A lot of people got upset with Giselle for saying that there seemed like there was some fraudulent behavior or some fraud or some embezzlement. She said embezzlement, but that's obvious in what we saw from the documents, even the way Mia tried to explain that. So she doesn't respect or revere loyalty. She just respects come up. So there are also a lot of people that are friends with you as long as they're doing better than you.
Yes.
It's great to have. It's almost like they like having a peanut gallery around, right? And that's the way it was, because when Mia would come around, Jacqueline was just kind of following her around, and she felt comfortable with it as long as Jacqueline was her, her audience and her fan. But
and that is why she constantly threw out the things that she did for Jacqueline. Oh, I got a Porsche, so she got a Porsche.
Right.
Right. I'm living large, so she's living large. She had to constantly, bolster what she's done for Mia to make herself, feel better or to feel higher. And it's like,
yeah, that's not real friendship. That's not real friendship. And unfortunately, Jacqueline it seems like she came from a slightly affluent family. If they could take a child in and she's in that area, probably doesn't have that same core foundation of survival. And so she probably really cares about me, especially knowing where she came from. But it was really disgusting to watch. Because like I said, Mia didn't take any accountability, even in the conversation with Wendy. I really thought after they went through all that, Mia went to her room. They were like, almost like I don't know. It was weird. Some weird stuff happening with Mia and Wendy, where I feel like Wendy was trying to fit in by being kind of sexual with Mia, which was really weird to me on Wendy's part. But I feel like I was surprised, even after all that, for Mia to not acknowledge that she regrets throwing the drink in Wendy's face. To me, you throw a drink in a person's face, that's violent, and it should be treated the same as if you hit the person, because it's just disrespectful. Yeah, it's disrespectful. So I don't understand why Mia did not have more consequences and wasn't held responsible for that. I feel like the show has to be, they have to set clear guidelines. And so, like, for instance, with Monique, now Monique did give it to Candace, but I think if you're going to say that, then you can't be okay with people throwing drinks or throwing lettuce and stuff like Candace was doing it. To me, everybody should just keep your hands, do not throw things. Like, if you do something like that, to me, you should be penalized and removed from the show, because that just is too much. It's too much.
Yeah, but I also think, to your point of, Mia not taking accountability, that goes back to her idea of like surviving. Okay, yeah. So this is why she makes up lies on top of lies on top of lies. So she couldn't get out of being held. She couldn't get out of the whole conversation of the drink toss.
Right.
So instead of me taking accountability, I'm going to sit here and make up a lie that you slept with Peter. Yeah. No one believed that. No. Like, girl, where did that even come from? I saw the footage. Mia, you don't even understand how you got voted out of your own position in your company. So why would we believe that you sat in bar one and watched? Like, girl, what?
Yeah, that was foolish. I think, like you said, it didn't even land.
No, right. The same thing with Jacqueline when she's sitting there and I got a box of receipts too, and she's trying to survive. If they don't have jobs, this is her only job. She has to make sure she comes back next season. So she's gonna do what she has to do.
When she said they were living off their savings, I'm surprised that Andy is okay. Now, Mia may come back just because it is, you have all these other women that don't show any vulnerability, no crack in the surface, right? Karen has still not addressed the blue-eyed man. And I know you guys know I'm coming down on Karen, but I just feel like they're all so hypocritical. Karen, Giselle, Robin, And Ashley, honestly, I feel like they're all hypocritical. So I and I don't charge Ashley the same, probably because she's a little bit younger and a little bit dingier. She's not, she's not as strategic as I feel like the other three are. But
Yeah. And
you have
she's not witty
she's
either.
clueless.
Yeah.
So you have all these other women that are not going to be, they want to show this air of being perfect and having all this together. And Mia is a train wreck, right? So I feel like for Bravo, it kind of balanced out the situation, because you have no vulnerability, and then you have this ridiculousness where Mia's like, yes, I have threesomes, and Andy's like, well, what do you do with the kids? Well, we have to be a little bit more discreet, but I mean, it's
right, and you're not, because you're talking about it on television, so it does, like, that's nothing she says or does make sense.
It makes no sense at all. Now, I do believe that Jacqueline and Mia were sexually involved. I believe that that's the only type of relationship that Mia knows how to have, because if you guys notice, all her like interactions, like even when she and Wendy had that exchange, she immediately takes it to a sexual place. Like she'll say, well, I liked her because she's cute. Like she's, and that's someone that was raised on survival, and all they know how to do is relate to people through their sexuality. And I feel like that's Mia all day. But I feel like the reason that she's even been able to live on this show is because it's almost like we need a little bit of dose of reality. I said that that Giselle, Robin, Karen, and Ashley were all trying to be perfect, but I have to add Wendy to that as well, because Wendy has this exterior of trying to look like she has it all together, and I don't buy that either. Like I think that she's very accomplished education wise, but the fact that you are so pressed to show other parts of yourself, you don't have it, and nobody has it all together, but there's still this very serious air of I'm better than you. I'm better than you. I feel like Potomac is just built on condescending women that are looking for opportunities for that. Wendy's Casey said Wendy's insecure. I agree. I think Wendy is insecure, but I think there's insecurity running through all of this entire cast in some way. Even though Giselle and Robin may kind of pontificate like they think they're all this, obviously there's some huge issues, because you're still trying to keep up appearances, and it's not working. So
yeah, I think the difference between, because Giselle really doesn't care about anybody, honestly, it's not just Wendy.
She doesn't care about Robin.
I think that the reason why it lands so hard with Wendy, and why it just comes off more harsh than Wendy, I believe, and I like Wendy, but I believe that Wendy lets them see her sweat. She's always the first one to apologize and try to make amends and try to pull everything together for the sake of the group, versus someone like Candace, who can continue to come at you. The only time I feel like Candace let anybody see her sweat to a degree was when the whole attack from Monique happened. Other than that, Candace can come out swinging. First season, came at Sharice. Sharice ain't bother Candace since. And you know what I mean? Like that's the only reason why I think that Wendy kind of like is a misfit in the group. It's because she is more accomplished. Like technically she's more accomplished than the rest of the women.
Oh, absolutely. She's the only person.
Right. So technically is that she does not need this show. She had a pedigree and a career out before this show. But I feel like this show is detrimental to her, and I will continue to say this. I do not understand why she's on it. To me, I don't feel as if any of her businesses or any of her commentary or social justice work or collegiate professorship that she's doing has really expanded outside of this. If anything, if I were on the administration or the board of Hopkins, I would be like, look,
I'd be concerned.
Yeah. And I talked to my cousin about that today. I'm like, has no one said like this is not a good look for you or whatever? And my cousin is like, well, maybe they feel like it's bringing more attention to their corporation. I'm like, I promise you, it's not.
It's not. That's interesting, but I don't think it's bringing positive attention. It may be bringing more attention, and we are in a place as a culture that all attention is good attention. I think that Wendy, I agree. Wendy is is definitely not fit for this show because she is accomplished. I think the fact that she wants to be on this show and she wants so desperately to fit in shows that, and I say this, I have to reference the book. You can have all the degrees, you can have the handsome husband that's accomplished, that loves you. And if you are not comfortable in your own skin, it's still going to show up. And Wendy has everything that you could imagine, every reason to feel confident, right? She has beautiful children. She's a beautiful woman. She has an amazing husband. She's very accomplished. She has degrees. She has positions of status. She's an anchor for CNN, for Christ's sake. She's a professor. She has this line of candles. I have no idea why she wanted to do that.
Mhm.
And then she's even doing this, trying to get into additional businesses. It shows that there's something inside of her that probably goes back to her relationship with her mom, which is why I'm really going to delve into Wendy, because I like Wendy a lot, but I think that the issues that Wendy is having are a lot like the issues I talk about in the Dear Alpha Female book, because it's about women being motivated by fear and being motivated to accomplish and achieve and not ever feeling a sense of satisfaction with self. And that's very dangerous. And I feel like we see her pandering to the other women, not because she really wants their validation. I don't think she really respects the other women. I think she wants to be accepted because there's something inside of her that's not okay.
Yeah, and it's extremely problematic, like you said. And I thought that it was very interesting. We all know that Giselle is trash. So collectively, we really saw that after her reasoning for, not saying anything against Mia is simply because she doesn't like Wendy. This goes back to the idea that Wendy lets them see her sweat, because Giselle didn't like Monique either. But when it came to Candace pressing charges on Monique, Giselle was against that. So what is the difference between Monique, when you said out of your own mouth, you felt like Monique beat Candace up, but you didn't want to go to jail for that? That doesn't even make sense. Versus Wendy, who had a drink thrown in her face and, could have been blinded for temporarily by alcohol being thrown in her face. And then a clutch purse hit her upside of the head like she was someone's child. What is the difference with that? Simply because you don't like her. It doesn't add up. She used to go at Wendy because Wendy has not put her in her place properly. I think Wendy think that she did put her in her place when she came at her with Eddie, but that was more that was more targeted toward Robin because Robin was her friend.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think people can, you can smell blood in the water, right? Sharks can smell blood in the water. And I think that it's apparent that Wendy is not as self-assured as some of the other ladies. I also think that people, the first season that Wendy was on, I think she looked fine, but she obviously didn't think that, right? Because she came back looking totally different. Like how she dresses is different. With all the surgery. Again, Brenda, her areola was fighting against, it was just like, I mean, you look good, but it's like, at what point you're a married woman and you don't have to compete like this. Like, you look great. Like, what are we doing? Why do we have to be, pushing it to that extent? It just felt like she was still trying to prove that I can do everything, that I can do exactly what they do, and then I can do this, and this. And that just suggests you don't have a good sense of self. Amanda says Wendy is still trying to find herself. She explained it in the Carlos King podcast, how she lived most of her life trying to please her mom. I definitely can see that.
We spoke about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that creates issues, which is why, like I said, this book and the conversation for alpha females, because alpha females raise alpha females. And a lot of times you can be accomplished and it can look like on the outside that everything is, great, but you're miserable inside, or you're dealing with anxiety. I empathize with Wendy a lot. I would definitely love to interview her. Seeing her talk about the fact that she was losing her hair, dealing with health issues. It's just too much. She's stretched too thin, but she's being pushed by something internally that's not healthy. So where other people would probably celebrate that, there's signs that it's very dangerous, and hopefully she can be an inspiration to others to get that together. But Giselle's making that comment, I was disgusted by that, by her saying, I just don't like Wendy.
Yeah, she definitely lacks a moral compass. And I'm I'm not a Giselle fan. So
Yeah.
but I thought that it was interesting for someone who, when the situation with Monique happened, and her first excuse for not wanting to be around Monique is, the first thing that I did is that I told my daughters, like,
Yeah.
you're raising daughters and you're always talking about how you want your daughters to be, women who support other women, and you're raising these queens, who are brown skinned girls. And for you to say that because you don't like a person, you don't care that they were physically assaulted. So if one of your 3 daughters is physically assaulted by someone who didn't like them, that makes it okay then.
That's exactly true. Take it back to Giselle. Like, it's ridiculous, and the hypocrisy was at an all-time high. Briefly, let's talk about what we think is going to come from this conversation with Andy and Robin.
Nothing.
I agree. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm going to tell you why. From my perspective, the reason I think there's going to be nothing is because I feel like Robin is stuck. And when it comes to her marriage, which is ridiculous that she's married, but when it comes to the marriage to Juan, I don't think that she has a clue as to, I'm sure she's embarrassed and humiliated, but what's more important than being embarrassed and humiliated is the fact that you are doing this. Your biggest issue is against yourself. And I don't feel like she gets it. I feel like she is just determined. The determination in Robin to remain in a marriage or remain in a relationship with her children's father, it outweighs her need to stand up for herself and to have any sense of self-respect. So she's in denial. Even in the clips that we've already seen, she's basically covering for him, because I don't believe that Robin really believes that he paid for someone's hotel room. I don't believe that she honestly believes that, but I feel like she is just so locked into lying to herself that she may have lost touch with reality.
She's pulling in Ashley, and you and I text about that. Her and Ashley and Robin should be sisters, because the way that they handle the situations with their men, and for Juan and Michael to be friends or friendly, I think that also like speaks volumes. So
no, I agree, and but I also feel like with both of them, and even to an extent with Giselle, because we know that Giselle, if Pastor Jamal Bryant had been willing to go along with the facade, I believe Giselle would have continued. But I think his shenanigans are at such a point that he doesn't want to continue that facade. And I would say he's a single man, so it's not shenanigans. But I feel like it no longer benefited him to keep up that lie. But I feel like that was his call and not Giselle's. I don't feel that Giselle, because she held on even when it was clear
that they weren't together.
They weren't together. She wanted to promote that falsehood. Even now, her talking about dating a 36-year-old on a reality show, like, child play. I'm skipping over that. But yeah, I think that that's the ongoing theme with this show and the ladies on this show, and it's really sad. So I don't think that we're going to hear anything that we don't know. We're going to hear Robin defend her relationship. I would like to see Andy hold her accountable, especially for that conversation that she had with Juan about the prenup, where he totally dismissed her and basically got up from the scene and left her looking crazy, right? When she tried to talk about the fact that she wanted a prenup. But we'll see. We'll see if he holds her accountable and makes her actually, because she said that none of this happened during taping. However, obviously the remnants of that continued, because you were having this conversation and it was clear that you were hurt, and it was clear that you knew that there had been infidelity, and that's why you brought it up. So I just hope that she'll be held accountable, and I hope that something will be done so that they are not able to slide past the situation anymore. I think that's really unfair.
I don't think anything is going to come out of this conversation with Robin. I think Andy wasted his time by doing this sit down with her. If I were Andy, because he is the head honcho over at Bravo, you didn't put it on the show. in any way, shape, or form. Like, she had multiple opportunities to put it on the show. You didn't even really film your wedding for the show, which has been your entire storyline since season 1. Are they together? Are they not together? Are they going to get married? Are they not going to get married? You didn't even give us that. Not that we cared, because you married Juan for yourself. We don't believe this.
We don't.
If you're going to do it, just put it on there.
Yeah.
But she didn't do that. So to me, you refuse to give up what you're supposed to give up of yourself as a reality star. You signed up to be on reality TV, not us. We just watch it and give our commentary.
Yeah.
So if I were Andy, I would have taken all that into consideration. Thank you for telling us what happened on your podcast. You didn't put it on the show, so I'm not going to put it on my show, and you'll be off the show.
Yeah. I mean, I
way too much light.
I agree. I feel like there has to be something that happens to that. I think Septos says our HOP needs a rebrand. They need to reestablish their respect among the viewers, and they're not going to get that without a major cash shakeup. I mean, they could do a cash shakeup, but I do think that people want to see the aftermath of this foolishness, right? I feel like the viewer is owed a response to the fact that Robin lied for an entire season about her relationship and she just totally lying about the whole thing. I think that we need to see the aftermath of that. I do feel like if she's going to be on, then Juan needs to be on board, because Juan not being there and Robin answering and making up and holding him down with lies is just is basically challenging the viewer's intelligence.
I don't understand. I wonder what your take on this is. I don't understand how. I know that the men don't get paid to be on the show, and the show is called Real Housewives and it's centered on them, but they are married.
Right.
I feel like Potomac is the only franchise where the husbands show up or they don't. Like, think, with the exception of Cordell in season 1 of, Portia's first season of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and we know why he didn't show up, because he was preparing to file for divorce. But Juan has shown up to, I want to say, 2 reunions. Michael has skipped 2.
Right.
Giselle never has a man long enough to have one.
No.
So, shut up, Kevin. So why is this okay? Because I watch all of the other franchises.
Yeah.
Jersey, they show up and they're heading to prison. Okay. Atlanta, they show up when they're headed to prison. Apollo. Why is it that Potomac, they're allowed to not show up? That's not a good point.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a very good point. I think, and it's ironic because like I said earlier, out of all the other franchises, to me, the husbands play a bigger role in Potomac than any of the other shows, because a lot of the other shows, you see the women, you see more from the women. I mean, Giselle's entire storyline was the fact that she was lying about Candace's husband. To me, this season, I mean, she did a little poking here and there. Candace's husband, the Sesame Street character brought it. Like, all of this is around husbands. It's constantly, even with Juan and Robin, like, it's their husbands are such an integral part. So the fact that they're allowed to do that is strange. Now, I do think that Kenya and Mark were going through divorce. I don't think they're divorced yet, but I think Mark didn't show up either. But I think it was because they had already kind of started the divorce process. I know Mark didn't want to be filmed, right?
Yeah. Why there was a consequence there.
Right.
She lost her job.
She did.
And I do agree with what you say when you say that viewers like to see the fallout, or even if we don't, Bravo always, that's still their that's their pattern. Because even after the fight with the dragging of what is her name? Kenya and Portia came back. She was demoted.
Yeah.
But she came back. So I agree with everything that you said. It's just interesting to me when you mentioned that, she always has to cover up for Juan, and Juan is never there. And just to think about how many times he's missed the reunion, and like I said, even Michael, that to me, that shouldn't be acceptable.
It shouldn't. I agree. That's a good point. It's a lot of strange things with Potomac, but that they're allowed to get away with that other people are not. Druzy says, I disagree about Love and Marriage DC. First, there's only been 2 seasons, one with the Samuels and one without. that absolute insanity between the Jamies and that fiasco. Child, we have to talk about Love and Marriage DC another time because they are definitely it's a lot going. There's a lot of family drama going on Love and Marriage DC. But and I don't, and it's funny because Love and Marriage DC, even though it's close to Potomac, it's a very different,
it's vastly different, yeah.
Very, very different culture, very different dynamic of the cast. And again, you know, you see women that are working, and it's not this idea of, you know, I'm taken care of. Like Ashley was a whole kept woman. Karen, you know,
wants to be kept.
Still wants to be kept by. And the fact that I did not realize that this home that Michael has her in
is in an LLC.
Is in his LLC, but it's a $2 million home.
Girl. Yeah, she said the mortgage is $13 million. Sorry, $13,000 a month.
If you don't get out of it,
this is why I said she's dumb. You if you're leaving a man, you have to find a home that you can afford on your own. Who is paying a $13,000 a month mortgage who's never lived on their own and never paid a bill in their marriage? That doesn't make any sense. I don't care how much money she's making on Potomac.
It doesn't, but I'm telling you, I believe there are certain women that are bred, and that's why I say there are certain women that have been taught from birth that because of their looks, they are supposed to be catered to and treated a certain way, and they feel like they're too good to work. I don't feel like Ashley wants to work. Ashley is TikToking, right? And there are certain people that make money on TikTok, but I don't think Ashley wants to. Ashley wants to be a kept woman, and it's very clear to me in the way she moved with the situation with Michael, even early on, and even the way she's moving now in this so-called divorce. She doesn't want to cut ties with Michael. The first thing that she did on last night's episode is she defended Michael and said he's a great father, but yet in the episodes, we're seeing her talk about how he's yelling and screaming at her in front of the children. So I'm over it. I feel like
the kids to his advantage when he knows that she's dating other men.
Right.
Oh, you think I'm gonna keep these kids all weekend while you laid up with a man? Bing. No.
But she also doesn't want, Ashley doesn't want to be, she doesn't want to have to work. She doesn't want to have to, and not even just work. She wants to live the lifestyle that she lived with Michael. She does not want to sacrifice that lifestyle. And that's what this is all about. There is no reason that there are people that are millionaires that don't live in a $13,000 a month mortgage home. That makes
no sense. The rent that I pay. I cannot imagine.
That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. And it's just
$13,000 a month.
Child, please. I don't buy the damsel in distress. And I don't buy any of it. I believe that Ashley was taught that this is how you look and this is what you can get and this is what you should do. So
that's her Uncle Lump. She didn't listen to a word that man said. He is over her.
Because she's not, that's not what she wants, but she just can't say the truth on the show because she realizes that she'll be penalized for it. So she dances around it, even saying that she's making up all these excuses so that she has to stay connected to Michael because she just doesn't want to leave. It's obvious to me, and I don't understand why people don't get that from her. Say it again, 13,000. 13,000 is stupid. That is dumb. That is a dumb mortgage unless money is no option. Like that's the type of
that's a Diddy mortgage.
It is like that's Jay-Z and Beyonce type stuff. Like stop the madness. You are, and she is a mother of
reality star. That's a Kardashian mortgage.
It is a
level of reality star,
right? But not Bravo Potomac franchise.
No,
one of 6. So I don't know. I'm not. We'll be back. We'll be back next Monday to talk about and the dogs will not be back.
You missed one thing though.
What?
Did you know Giselle had a sister?
No.
Girl, when she said
yes.
We talked about this whole hysterectomy scene and we missed this whole part. When she said my sister drove with me, I said, what sister? You've been on this show for 7 seasons.
We had no
idea that you had a sister. What does she look like? What is her name? Where does she live?
Why have we never?
That is a prime example of her not sharing any aspect of her life. Mm-hmm. Because the fact that she's been on this show since 2016, it is 2023, and none of us knew that you had a sister.
No,
she should be kicked off just based on that.
I didn't even pick that up, but you're right. I didn't even pick that up because we've not really met any of her. We don't know anything about Giselle. All we know is that she was married to Jamal Bryant And even though she did mention that he had infidelity, really the entire scandalous story has been kept out of the show. And the fact that, and she very politely and discreetly did away with the fact that he was philandering on her even when they were supposed to be back together. We've only met the daughters, and even the daughter's birthday party, it just again felt like an opportunity for Giselle to keep this lie up about her status with Jamal Bryant, Pastor Jamal Bryant. Like, I don't know. I just, Giselle is, we'll see. We'll see if Andy holds either of them accountable. But I do feel like Robin doing this and Andy kind of putting it to Giselle during that scene where she said, we'll talk about it later. And he's like, no, we'll talk about it now. I think Andy may be fed up with the Green-Eyed Bandits.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you don't agree with me, To Love Kalia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I'm sorry if I am, but it's been a long day. When I say that she doesn't come from a well-established family, I don't mean that she doesn't come from a family like who didn't work or anything. Well-established versus Potomac well-established are two completely different things. That's all I was trying to say.
We're talking about like generational wealth. Like,
I made it clear that I said that her mother was a professor. That's a really decent job and salary, especially coming up in the time where Robin came up.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that compared to her co-stars when she started on this show, and from what we know about her family, as Christal mentioned, it's more about maintaining an image. And she comes from a traditional marriage. Her parents have been married for like 40 years. That's the only thing that we were trying to say. I don't know anything enough about her parents' finances to know, the rest.
I think that people sometimes, for most African Americans, middle class was
working middle class, though, not like you don't have to work.
Right. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about when you don't have to work, when you're, there's a situation where you don't have to work and your parents are. And also, I'm also talking about in that area of Potomac, there are African American families that have been established as far as college and ownership long before others, because most of them were children of slave owners, right? A lot of them there was that mixed in. It's going back to the colorism. A lot of them were descendants of their masters, and also a lot of them were taught, which is what we don't want to talk about with colorism. A lot of them were taught to only be with others that were the same, that blue blood, that you could see the blue veins through them, that were that fair skinned, because that way their children would remain that way and you could keep that bloodline looking that way. So all of their children. So if you go to that area in Potomac, and there's another subdivision up there that's like that, you'll see a lot of those people that have come from families that have been well established for years, where most African Americans don't have that lineage. Like, we can go back, like my mother might have went to college, but probably not my grandmother and my great grandmother.
Right. So, it's like Robin is probably like first or second gen. Right. And she's not from Potomac. She's from Baltimore City or city/county. That's all I was saying.
And I also think, a lot of comments were made about Robin and Giselle being the Green-Eyed Bandits and all that. To me, and we all know, even like I said, with a lot of those descendants were taught to marry within that color schematic. A lot of people were also told to socialize with them as well. And I'm not saying that's the case with Robin and Giselle, but I think the fact that there was this talk and this promotion of the fact that they both were fair skinned with green eyes feels very much like that type of vibe that is a part of that whole culture there. So
and if they didn't marry like the fair skinned or the lighter skinned, it kind of goes back to that movie, like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Like, if they were going to be darker skinned, they had to be exceptional, which is where you get, Giselle marrying the head pastor, or a pastor that worked his way up to become that. That whole idea plays into the colorism thing as well.
Yeah, and I also want to say, we don't know about Robin's family, but outside of what we've been told. But what I can say to Love Keela is that you can, in high school, there are usually, not everyone that's a high school athlete at a certain level does not go pro. However, there are some people that you could tell that there is going to be promise there. And a lot of young women are taught to go after men that are, that are the star of the basketball team, the star of the football team. And also a lot of those guys felt like it was a prize to be with that fair-skinned girl with green eyes. I mean, this is stuff that it doesn't sound good to say, but that's also just a part of our culture that we do know. So anyway, we're tuned in for
Yeah, we'll see.
we're tuned in for next week, but I don't have much faith in the fact that Andy's going to get anything out of Robin. And I am interested to see how this plays out next season. Andy asked, will we be able to see Giselle's love interest next season? And she said yes. But we'll see. But I think both of them need to come with it. The only reason, again, I'm saying, guys, the only reason I don't think that either of them need to be fired is because I think that would be too easy. I think they need to be held to the fire. If you want this check, you're going to have to earn it just like everybody else. So that's what I feel like we need to see. So other than that, I'm interested to see next week. I think we'll delve into the hypocrisy of Robin and Juan's marriage even more. I'm going to pull some of those pictures up because we text those pictures back and forth. Juan looked like he was gritting his teeth.
The
wedding pictures. Yeah. The wedding picture. Saptosa said they got 7 seasons of checks. They're good. She wants them off. She wants Giselle off.
Yeah, I agree though. I don't think that they're going to be off. They're not. Only because based on Bravo's history of how they've done other franchises, I think there have been like far worse offenses as far as like physical fights.
Yeah.
Where even Monique was ex back. She decided not to come back because they wanted to kind of see how that would have been reconciled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think they're gonna come back.
No, they're gonna come back.
I think they will come back.
Yeah, they don't have them embellished hats. I got a girlfriend that bought 2 of those hats. And no, that's not going to sustain. She was like, Christal,
she still did those.
I can't believe I had a girlfriend that bought that she gave them away. Oh, you guys want them gone. You guys really want these 2, the green-eyed bandits gone.
The viewers are tired of it.
They are. We're going to get a hashtag for next week.
Especially if you, like I said, I've watched it from the beginning, so I've seen all of the shenanigans.
Yeah. No,
it's old.
I have too. I feel like I didn't have the same issue with, I felt bad for Robin because I feel like she's in a marriage and that's gotta, at the end of the day, regardless of her acting a certain way and being mean towards other women, when you are in a marriage with a man that doesn't want you and doesn't respect you, that has to feel horrible. And she knows that. The way Juan is disrespectful to her on camera. So can you guys imagine what it's like off camera for him to say that he wasn't attracted to her and he was like all that stuff that he said to her on camera? I can't imagine how much worse it is off camera. So I just felt like she's a woman that's miserable. She knows her husband is cheating and she's taking it out on the rest of the cast. Giselle is the woman that everybody probably had a lot of high hopes for that hasn't lived up to any of them. That has to feel bad as well. So I try to have a little bit of grace, but I think we'll definitely see what happens. But
yeah, same. I try to have grace too, but the longer you stay on reality television, the less grace that you're given as time goes on.
That's true. You said we want Omarosa winning wrong. That's on that note.
Is she in DC? I mean, in Potomac?
I don't know. I don't know where Omarosa is after her stint with Trump and then him turning on her. I don't want to hear from Omarosa at all. But I feel like, if anything, I feel like there needs to be new blood. But I feel like with Potomac, this idea of getting the pretty privileged girl, it has not gone well at all. Like, because you just don't get, you get good reads, but at the end of the day, you don't get authentic television, right? So even Candace, who, is not necessarily the fair skin, but for a while, she was in that Black American princess, privileged, very, very spoiled, attitude. Now we've seen her grow up and I feel like I think that's why Candace has become a favorite. I saw somebody earlier mention that they wish that, that Candace got the first seat. Child, please, only Karen lives in Potomac. I believe that. We know Giselle. What is that? What is her house called?
Oh, Hotel Giselle. Yeah, and she doesn't live in Potomac. It
You know
says
that's
where
not.
they live when they shoot to their home. She lives in Bethesda.
Yeah, we
Ashley
know that
lives
that's
in
not.
Virginia. Yeah,
We know
Ashley
that
lives
that's
in
not.
Virginia. Candace lives in Upper Marlboro, which is a suburb in Maryland. It's a nice suburb. I
Yeah.
don't know what area Robin lives in. I
Well,
have
when
parents always saying Hanover, which is like close to Baltimore, so I don't know.
when we saw the house, and I don't believe there's house we should you should house
Oh,
shame,
house shame. Yeah.
but 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 that backyard whack ass couples race that she had at her house, and
That was at her house?
it was at her house. It was in our backyard, and that Juan did not actually show up for at his own house. It left.
I thought she had a field day like at a park. I did not know that was at her
It was
house.
at her house because you saw when they
Oh.
came, when they arrived, they came to her house, and it was just like, this is weird. It was in the back, it was in the backyard. Yeah, it left much to be desired. Karen is the only one that is a true Potomac, but
And when Monique was on there, she lived in Potomac.
right, and also Sharice, obviously.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sharice. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Monday night.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Yes, we will be back for a super episode of Married at First Sight. Are we going to do that Wednesday?
Yeah, as long as it's around the same time. Well, it'll be after because the show doesn't go off until what, 10?
9:30. It goes off at 9:30. So we could do 9:30 or 10, but I'll put up a invite. So you guys make sure to hang out with us, because trust me, there's a lot to unpack with Married at First Sight this next episode and last episode, because we're going to be recapping both of those. Yeah, Septo said the interior of Robin's house is absolutely gorgeous. That's fine, but that backyard left much to be desired, my love. So I'm not with that.
You know, people get so mad in the comments.
They do. But you know, people.
I'm shocked. I have to go back and watch the episode. I thought that was at like a park. Like, you know how you used to have the field days at school?
Yeah, no.
It was at a park.
No, it was G Michelle said Giselle's house looks like
of a church. It does.
I was just glad she pulled it together from last season.
It looks good though. It looks good in comparison to what it's looked like
last season. And Mia, but see, whenever, this is the thing though, but I'm gonna say this, and then I know we're gonna leave. Whenever people have, because the Real Housewives of Atlanta were like that. These women had these ridiculously ostentatious homes, and then at the end of the season, they were out of that home and into another one. And they kept, every season, you see a different car, you see a different home. So even though Mia's home looked beautiful, I knew that would not be able to sustain. Like, it just doesn't, it's because you're doing it for the show. And
the $10,000 a month rent and the $60,000 bill for the interior design. It was that, again, Ashley, counterproductive.
Right. Like Santos said, like Kim Zolciak, that just got the house out of foreclosure. It's just not. But you know what? I think I think our society puts a lot of pressure on people, and reality TV is even more. I mean, people are pressed on Instagram trying to post things. So
yeah, but it's always good to see like the slow come up. Like, you know, Cynthia was very forthcoming about her and Peter's financial issues, and then when she got a divorce, she moved into Lake Bailey. Yeah, I love to see that versus you like paying an astronomical amount of money for rent or mortgage, where you can just slowly take your time and show the reality of it, because that is the reality.
Like Portia moving into that ridiculously huge, overpriced house, and that's probably why she had to get married to the African, because it was just, even everyone on the show was like, why are you doing this? Casey Johnson says, bye, aren't Karen and Ray renting? Let me tell y'all something. If the Grand Dame is renting, and there's nothing wrong with renting, there's absolutely nothing wrong with renting, but all that, just over the top, this is me and this is what we have. If she's renting, I'm out. Like, I am over Potomac, period. If Karen is renting, I'm going to look it up, and we're going to.
I don't think she's renting anymore. She had moved from Potomac to Great Falls, and she moved back to Potomac.
Child, you see that meme with what's her name? Oh my gosh, Viola Davis, where she picked up her purse and turned and left. I'm going to put that meme in there.
Yes.
No, that is me if Karen and Ray are renting. If the Black Bill Gates,
I just don't think, like, I'm always like that much house for anybody that that doesn't have like a super large family. I just always think is ridiculous. Like, A, who's cleaning the house? B, it's just like Karen's home is gorgeous, but it's just Karen and Ray. Like, her children don't live there. So I just think that's still crazy.
I mean, I think if you have a family home, because I know for me, my husband and I are just here, and there we have a little bit of
Yeah,
space.
you guys could be on one of these shows.
No, we don't have any. It's nothing like that. But it is because we have 6 kids between the two of us, and so we want them to be able to come for holidays, and if somebody comes to stay, they there's the bedrooms for people like that. So I think if if you want that, there's nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't want to live in I wouldn't want to move just because the kids are grown, because a lot of times your kids can your grandkids can make memories.
I'm getting what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think that people should.
Somebody said, Septosa said, I don't think we tune into Housewives franchises to see people living in starter homes. I understand, but
Karen in those white cabinets first season, y'all, let me tell you something. It's the problem is the fact that you act like you have so much money and then you don't. That's the problem. It's the fact that Kim Zolciak goes overboard to act like money is no issue, and then you're in bankruptcy court. Nene has done the same thing. It's the audacity and the lie of it all.
So back to the starter homes thing. That's what we mean by it. No, we don't want to see them living, in project adjacent, but we also, if we know that they can't afford the homes that they're living in.
Yeah.
Ashley has said that she cannot afford a $13,000 mortgage. So why are you on your own? So why are you doing it?
Who can afford a $13,000 mortgage? That is all for, I don't even know if it's for the cameras. That's just foolishness. It's absolute foolishness. The Trumpiness, that is the Trumpiness of it all. It's absolute foolishness. So we're going to come back, guys, with receipts about this wedding and just take this whole marriage apart next week. On Monday, we'll definitely be back and be talking about that. You guys tune in on Wednesday. Brenda, you and your lovely guy have a great night. I'm going to get out of here. And yes, I will see you guys. We'll see you guys back here Wednesday night for Married at First Sight. All right. Have a good week, guys. Bye.